Hello, welcome back to Go Natural English. Today we have a very interesting question to consider. Can anyone become a native English speaker? So I think this question is very important because a lot of English learners and English as a second language teachers are always emphasizing the importance of sounding like a native English speaker. You have to immerse yourself in native English speaking situations. You have to practice speaking with native English speakers. The ideal is the native English speaker. So I think it's an interesting question. Have you ever thought about, can you be a native English speaker? So I think this is going to be really interesting to chat about. Now, before we talk about it, I just want to encourage you to turn on the captions in English. If you are learning English, this can really help you. And if you would be so kind and willing to translate this video into your native language, you could help more people from your country to learn with us. So you can do that using the link in the description, and when you do translate the video, your name will appear in the description as a thank you. Can you be born in one language, speaking one language, and then can you become a native speaker of another language? Well, first, we have to define what does it mean to be a native speaker of a language. I think there are many different definitions and there's a really wide range between them. So on one end of the range of this spectrum of answers, we have the answer that honestly, I believe that is a native speaker of a language is someone that is born into a family or in a country or in a setting that speaks that language. So a native English speaker like me would be born in an English-speaking country, but you could also be born into an English-speaking family living in another country. So it's a little bit complicated. Now, the next question is, okay, if you have to be born into this environment, well, what about people that learn English as a second language when they're a kid, like 6, 7, 8 years old? If you learn a second language before the age of 13, basically before puberty sets in, so as you're still developing, then yes, you can be considered a native speaker because your language skills are still developing and you're able to really grasp the language and the culture, which is a super important part of communication. Now, on the other end of this range of definitions would be, well, no, a native speaker doesn't have to be born into that language. They don't have to start learning that language as a child. They can simply be confident in their communication. If you feel comfortable and confident expressing yourself, talking, speaking, listening to and understanding anyone who speaks that language, let's say it's English that you are becoming a native speaker in, then fine, okay, then let's consider you a native English speaker because you can function successfully and confidently really in any English speaking situation. Now, I would love to ask you, what do you think is the true definition of a native English speaker? Is it someone who is born into an English-speaking family or country, or someone who starts speaking English before they're a teenager, or is it someone who is simply able to express themselves in a fluent manner? I want to hear from you in the comments. So, can anyone become a native English speaker? As I mentioned, the answer really depends on your definition of what is a native speaker. Now, let's say that, as I mentioned, I really believe that a native English speaker is someone who I believe that a native English speaker is really someone who started learning the language before they became a teenager. So I'm sorry for everyone who started learning another language after 13 years old. It's just not possible to be a native speaker of that language for many reasons. One, developmentally, you have already learned another language into adulthood or past your puberty years, past being a teenager, and so that's kind of set you into some certain practices, your brain is kind of set in its ways. It doesn't mean that you can't learn another language really fluently. It just means that your native language, your first language, has been set. It's like when you set the settings, the language settings on your phone or a computer or something. It's like that is the language settings. It doesn't mean you can't add another later on, but the main setting is that one. That's not a great example because you can always change the language, but anyway, you know what I mean. So if you are learning another language as an adult, I don't think that you can become or turn into or transform into a native English speaker, a native speaker of that language. However, and this is very, very important, so please hear me out. You can become a natural speaker of that language, which is why I call this Go Natural English, who is accepted by, understood by, and accepted by native speakers of that language. So when you get to a point of fluency, of confidence, of expression, where native English speakers or native speakers of the language you're learning, I'll just say English speakers just to keep it simple, but this really applies for any language, when they don't slow down, when they don't make amends to the way they speak, when they don't change the way that they express themselves because they're afraid that you're not going to understand, when they accept you, when they know that you're in on all the jokes and you get all the cultural references, that to me is just as good as being a native English speaker, when you are accepted by other native and fluent speakers of that language. So as adults, if you are over 13 years of age, don't despair. Also, because it can actually be easier to learn a language when you are over 13, when you're an adult, because you have knowledge of what is grammar, what is vocabulary. You understand that language has a structure and rules, whereas kids are just kind of absorbing things as we go, observing life and how people communicate with each other. So learning a language as an adult is not something that you should be sad about or feel like you're inferior to kids that learned English, growing up. It's just different, and you can use this to your advantage. So now let's talk about how you can become accepted by English speakers, native English speakers, fluent English speakers. How do you break this barrier between being seen as an English learner that people have to slow down for or be patient with, and really breaking through to being someone that is accepted socially, culturally, as a native or, as a second language native? I'm gonna give you 4 really powerful suggestions for you to improve your nativeness or your naturalness in English, to become accepted by native speakers of the language. And I want to share a little bit of my own story, so it's not just me lecturing. I want to share what's happened to me and for me as I've learned other languages. The first place that I went abroad was the Dominican Republic. Do we have any Dominicans watching here? And I remember when I was learning Spanish, I went there and I wanted to drink the local drinks, and there's a drink that's called morir soñando. And I said, quiero morir soñando. And the waiter just laughed at me. He thought it was super cute because basically I didn't say that I wanted this drink. I literally said I want to die dreaming, because I missed a small detail. The article to identify a or one, yo quiero morir soñando. So instead of saying I want a to die dreaming, I guess is the name of the drink, I said I want to die dreaming. So the details matter. What I learned from this experience, this kind of funny story, is that the details matter. And just because you hear native speakers not really emphasizing articles like or the, they still matter. So you need to really understand how to use articles and how to use these details in the language. Another experience I had in the Dominican Republic, which was, man, a really, it was a time in my life when I was like really growing as a person and really growing as a language learner. So I realized for the first time that everything I'd learned, almost everything I'd learned in my university Spanish class was useless in the real world, because in my class, we learned quite formal Spanish. Hola, ¿cómo está usted? And when I got into the real world, I realized that people only use this kind of language with maybe much older people, like someone I really wanted to show respect for, maybe some friend's grandmother, for example, or grandfather, or if I met the governor or something. But in everyday situations, talking with friends at the university, because I did a semester at the university there in the Dominican Republic, and people don't talk like that. So I had to learn how people speak colloquially. And so I started learning, ¿cómo está? ¿Cómo tú estás? ¿Qué lo que? Like very different ways of saying, how are you? And there's a ton of other colloquial expressions. And so I mention this because it is really important in English or any language to really pay attention to how people actually speak with each other in everyday life. Pay attention to the words, pay attention to the pronunciation, and start copying and using those phrases yourself. It's not just for asking, how are you? It's not just for greetings. It's in every aspect of life. People use different phrases. One I often share with my English learners is that native English speakers will ask, are you all set? And this is really a catch-all phrase for, are you ready to go? Or if you're at a store, are you ready to check out? Did you want to buy anything else? Are you all set? Like, are you finished? Have you done your work? It can be used in many different ways, but you don't usually use that, or you don't usually learn that in your textbook or use it in your classroom. So pay attention to the colloquial phrases and you'll sound much more like a native. So another thing to pay attention to is the cultural mannerisms. This could be gestures, this could be the way people express themselves, even the clothing that people wear. When I was in Japan, I was working as an English teacher, and I would ask my boss if I could do certain things that were a little outside of my job description, and she would respond by sucking her teeth, like, and I didn't realize that this meant no. So I must have seemed like a very stubborn employee because I was always asking, trying to get a straight answer. A straight answer to me is saying directly, no, you can't do that. But in Japan, it's very rare for people to so directly say no. So instead they have different mannerisms. And I know in different countries and different languages, people say no or yes in different ways. So I think in India, people nod, whereas in the US, this means yes. So pay attention to the gestures and the ways culturally that people express themselves, maybe starting with yes and no. Also, when I came here to Brazil, I would often go to the store or the supermarket, and going to the checkout counter is a very normal experience. I think almost all of us shop at stores, so we have this experience. But what I never expected were two questions that they ask almost every single time that nobody told me in any Portuguese lesson. They always ask for my CPF, which is kind of like a social security number, which was totally confusing to me. I was like, why would I give you my social security number? It seemed like an invasion of privacy, but now I understand there's other reasons for that in Brazil, like you gain points or something. I don't know, it's used a little bit differently than a social security number, which is a bit more private in the US. Also, they ask almost every single time if I want to parcelar, which is to divide up payments. Even for something small, like a $10 item, do you want to, pay 12 times? So funny to me because in the US we don't have this. And so at first I would get really stuck on these questions. I didn't expect them. And so I didn't know how to respond. And I didn't understand at first because I didn't expect them. But now I expect them and I know how to respond, which is basically no and no. So this matters. The details in the language, the small grammar points, the pronunciation, the way people communicate in different ways with different gestures or different ways of saying yes or no. And also, what are the normal situations or sequences of events? What could you guess is going to happen if you go to a checkout counter in the US versus in Brazil? In the US, they would ask you, are you all set? In Brazil, they would ask you, what's your CPF and do you want to divide your payments? So it's really important in order to be accepted as a native to understand what's important. So these are the important points. I'm going to give you some specific tips on how to build your skills in these areas. Now, this might seem like a lot to think about. It's not only the language that you have to learn, you have to pay attention to details, pronunciation, gestures, colloquial phrases, and slang. But don't worry, fluency to me is like a puzzle. When you shake out all the pieces of the puzzle onto a table, and most of them are face down. So you can kind of see the shapes, but you don't know what the puzzle really looks like. And little by little, with each thing you learn, you start to turn over the pieces. And so you have more and more information. And then once you've turned over all the pieces, you start putting the pieces together, and then you start seeing the whole picture, and you're able to, in fluency terms, express yourself more completely. And it helps if you already know another language. It's much easier to learn a third, fourth, or fifth language. When I started learning Spanish, I didn't know any other languages. I had grown up my whole life until about 20 years old speaking only English. So I never had the chance to become a native speaker of another language, but I've learned how to become accepted by native speaker social groups of other languages, in Spanish, Portuguese, pretty much in Japanese, a little bit in French. And so I know how amazing it can be socially. You can benefit so much by understanding that there's more than just the language rules that you can learn and you can use in order to be more accepted by native speakers of English. Now, finally, let me tell you specifically the 4 areas to focus on. First of all, focus on the details, especially the details of pronunciation. So I mentioned learning how to use articles. Also, focus on pronunciation, because it will give you the confidence to continue to express yourself and to be accepted as a native or by native speakers. So one thing that changed my life as a language learner and a language teacher was taking a Spanish phonetics class. So I encourage you, if you can, look at some information on phonetics, learn the International Phonetic Alphabet, and look at how words in English are spelled or communicated using the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet. When you focus on pronunciation, this will give you a huge edge, a huge advantage over other people who might know more rules of the language, but they can't express themselves, they can't talk, they can't speak in a native-like way. So who do you think is going to be more accepted socially? Someone who sounds more native or someone who knows all the rules? Okay, so this depends on what you want. Do you want to pass a grammar test, or do you want to communicate and speak with fluent or native English speakers? So again, where you focus your time and energy depends on your goals. Now, here's an exercise that you can do to work on improving your understanding of details like articles and pronunciation. Take any book in English that's meant for adults, an authentic book meant for native speakers, and just take the first sentence. It could be a magazine, it could be a news article, but choose something with kind of a long sentence, nothing too easy. And find a native speaker that can help you. Now read the first sentence out loud. There's probably going to be at least one article, if not more. And of course, you're going to be practicing your pronunciation. Then speak and say or read the sentence out loud for your native speaker friend and just ask them, On a scale of 1 to 3, how do you sound? Do you sound like a native speaker? Slightly off, maybe a few mistakes? Or pretty bad, needs a lot of work? And then continue to practice. You're going to ask your native speaker friend to read the sentence for you. You might want to record them. Ask them if you can record them first so that you can repeat and you can practice copying after them. This is like shadowing, saying exactly as you hear your native speaker friend saying the sentence. Now, you can do this even if you don't have any native speaker friends. You can do this with music. You can do this with speeches. You can do this from a lot of content on YouTube. It's quite easy actually to find native speaker materials, but this is just one example of practice that you can do using a book or anything with a sentence. And continue to practice until your native speaker friend gives you a rating of number 1 that you sound like a native, and then move on to the next sentence. This is a good exercise because you're going one sentence at a time and it's not overwhelming. It's not like, okay, I have to speak all of English perfectly. No, it's just one sentence at a time. Second, use words and phrases that native speakers use locally. So as you know, English is a global language, and in different regions and different countries, people use different vocabulary, different expressions, and different slang words. I remember when I was learning Spanish, I first learned it in the Dominican Republic, where torta means a cake. And then I went to Mexico, where torta means a sandwich. Completely different. When I was looking for something sweet, I got something salty. So I learned quickly. In English class, they also teach you a lot of verbs that native speakers don't use that often. Instead of to return, we'd be more likely to say to go back to. So phrasal verbs are super important for anyone who wants to be more accepted by native speakers. So there are tons of examples of vocabulary and phrases that they teach you in textbooks, but people don't really use in real life. And there are examples of these for almost any language. It's just crazy sometimes when I think about it. Why do they teach you things that are not really useful in textbooks? I think it's because in school, textbook learning is more geared toward or more for academia or people who want to completely master the language. But in order to be fluent in a language, you don't need to know all of the academic language. You don't need to go farther than fluency. You don't have to master the language in an academic way. Again, it depends on your goals, but for me, the first step is fluency. The first step is being able to communicate yourself, and then you can decide if you want to learn more academic speak, if you want to learn how to read and write academic articles, if you want to read literary works, novels from the 18th century perhaps. I remember when I was learning Spanish in my university and I took a Spanish poetry of the 18th century class. And guys, I did not do well in that class because I was so frustrated that we were supposed to analyze this old Spanish that had nothing to do with actually communicating with people. I just wanted to be fluent so that I could have more Spanish-speaking friends and be accepted by them. And that poetry class was not getting me any closer to those goals. Third, pay attention to cultural expression. I don't mean colloquialisms or phrases here. I mean little things like when you pause, how do you fill the silence? I would say, a French speaker might say, a Spanish speaker might say, pues, a Japanese speaker might say, esto. So learn in the language that you want to be fluent with how people fill the silence. How do you show that you're actively listening to someone in your language? In Japanese, I learned to say, to say like, yes, I'm listening, or yes, I agree. And in English, you wouldn't say that, although sometimes I still do that because I kept my habits from Japan and people think I'm a weirdo. But in English, we would usually say, or or okay. Knowing what phrases to use often requires interaction directly with native speakers. or a close native speaker friend, or to have a closer relationship with a native speaker, because these are the little things that come out in everyday life that really help you to blend in as a native speaker. Now, fourth, this is very important, so it is last but not least. It is mindset. You have to believe that you, an adult language learner, is capable of sounding native-like. You may not be able to transform magically into a native speaker. However, you can be native-like, you can sound natural like a native in English, and be accepted by native English speakers. But you have to believe this. You have to have the mindset, you have to believe in yourself, you have to know that it's possible that if you work on these 4 points, you will get there. Now, all of these, except for maybe the mindset, require you to interact with native speakers. If you're not living in a native speaking country, see if you can find expats or native speakers of English living in your city. If you're really living in the middle of nowhere, then use the internet. You can listen to podcasts by native English speakers. You can watch TV series or movies that have native English speakers. There is such a wealth of information and so many amazing, fun, entertaining materials that you can use to help you reach a native-like level. Music is also fabulous because learning the lyrics to music not only helps you with pronunciation, songs often tell a story, so they're interesting and they give you insight into the culture. Songs often have a lot of interesting slang and phrases as well, so use music as a fun way to improve your fluency and to sound more like a native. It also helps to listen to what's hot, what's new, because it gives you something to talk about with other native speakers when you have the chance. Well, to wrap up this longer rant, I just want you to know that it is possible for you to be accepted by native speakers and to sound native-like. If you focus on these 4 points, which, just to recap, is focus on the details, especially small things like articles, prepositions also, and pronunciation. Learn gestures and the way that people communicate to say yes, no, or other things in English. Use colloquial phrases, slang, and vocabulary the way people really use it in real life. Learn what phrases to expect in everyday situations, like at the checkout counter. And don't forget, your mindset is super important. You have to believe that you are able to do this. Believe in yourself that you are able to reach a native level in English, or native-like and accepted by other native speakers. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you thought. And it would be amazing if you subscribe here to Go Natural English on YouTube. I count on you all to subscribe, to share the videos, to help grow the channel, to keep us going strong. Let me know if you like this topic and what you would like us to talk more about next time. Thanks so much for watching. I'm gonna leave another video for you, the next one that I think would be the most beneficial for you on your journey to native-like fluency, right over there. So click right over there and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye for now.